Well, Happy New Year, guys. I can't believe it's already 2026. This is real footage of me working on the year compass in 2023, and it's kind of crazy how I was talking about the YouTube channel back then, and we're finally here. And so now to the video. Well, this video is going to be a little bit different because I didn't have time to record a normal video. I didn't even get to finish my New Year vision casting process. So we're going to kind of do it together in real time. Well, not in real time, no. But my goal will be to finish that and to share what are some of my big pillars that I'm thinking through as I'm thinking through 2026, and what are some of the things that have shaped my 2026. So I have my iPad here. My year compass is open. I've started part of 2026, but I still am going to finish it. I might not be able to finish the goals part, but that's okay, because just because the year started doesn't mean we can't still be planning for it. So probably next video or by the next week, I will have my goals set and my setup for it and my system and my way of tracking and all of that. Yeah, I think that's how I'll do it. I finished the year ahead Dare to Dream Big part, where I usually write out these big circles of things that I'm focusing on and how they all interconnect. So my big circles are, the center one is life reset, and then the things that branch off of it, one is enjoying him, rearranging my days to enjoy him. Then another thing that's been huge as a theme is mental clarity. I want this year to be one of mental clarity. A lot of things feed into that, but maybe I'll talk about that more later. And then another key thing is side gigs / diversification of income streams. Even if I end up getting a job that pays the bills, I don't want that to be my single income stream that I have to rely on. I've been really convicted of diversification of your income streams. So what does that look like? That's going to be a really big focus because I'm going to need to pay my bills and my loans. And then another big circle is health. Like, I've made huge strides in my health this year. And so next year, focusing on other aspects, kind of extrapolating off of what I've worked on this year. And then the last big bucket is this creative side. That is a side that I've been convicted of wanting to prioritize, and not necessarily connecting that with money making or like my side gig, but wanting to prioritize that because I really do think we were called to create as sub-creators. Like, that is one of the things that sets us apart as image bearers compared to other creatures that he's created. The fact that he is our creator and he created us so that we could co-create with him. It always just blows my mind that he made the animals and then he asked Adam to name them. So we're like in that process with him. And the whole cultural mandate, being fruitful and multiplying and subduing the earth, all of that is a creative process. So anyways, those are the things I want to focus on in the new year, and more to come. So here we go. I will put on my timer for like an hour just to keep myself on track with the 5 million things I have to do. Let's go. See you in a bit. All right, so I finished my 2026 the year compass reflections. As I was going through this again, I was like being reminded of all the things I wish I could change about it. But these prompts helped me to think about what are areas that I want to go deeper into, what are some tangible action steps that I would take, or it helps me to think of what are the possible goals that I would want to implement in order for me to focus on some of these areas. So one example that came out as I was doing this is, I've been really convicted about this whole brain rot inducing lifestyle that pretty much everything in this life seems to not just encourage, but force onto everyone in a way. It really bothers me. And as much as I try to resist it, if you're just going with the flow, you'll just end up in brain rot. I try to be intentional about my screen time, but even on days where I am not as careful and end up just watching all this short form media, things that are trying to induce some kind of emotion in you, and just seeing snippets of things rather than things that are fully thought out, not even creating your own thoughts because you're just in consumption mode. Anyways, I want mental clarity, because in order for me to create, in order for me to enjoy God and to live in the present and intentionally, like, I need mental mental clarity, or else everything's a blur and everything's like the hamster wheel life. And so how do I fight against the brain rot? So I've been just thinking of ways of creating resistance in my own life, because you need to like exercise that brain muscle and the critical thinking and creating versus consuming. As I was answering some of these questions, I don't really like this question per se, but it says, I will pamper myself with these 3 things regularly. And one thing I thought of is having a Sabbath day. This is outside of Sunday Sabbath, but maybe once a month where I completely disconnect. I just love being disconnected from my phone. I don't want to live my life and be at the gates of heaven and be like, yeah, I spent 50% of my life on this device. It's an endless influx of messages and inbox DMs and text messages and emails, and I don't want to spend all my life just answering messages. You feel the pressure, it's a distraction, and there's switching costs to when you answer things. I've been using more airplane mode lately, but I think it would be nice to have one day in the month where it's like my Peace Corps days, just completely disconnected and not be on devices and be in like old school analog mode, like pre-internet mode of life, where you're spending time outside, in person, creating things, doing hobbies, working with your hands, getting fresh air, being in nature, all these things that are actually scientifically proven to be so good for you health-wise. Okay, that's a bit of a tangent, but that's something that I'm like, oh, I want to implement something like that, as well as a better nighttime winding down routine, because I noticed that as I've been tracking my sleep, my issue is I'm going until right before bed. I've been better now that I've seen the data about trying to wind down more about an hour before bed, but I used to not operate that way, and I'm realizing how that's affected my sleep. We're supposed to be going with our circadian rhythms and not against it. And so how do I implement better winding down routines? Because my morning routine and my next day is going to be impacted by the night before, including my sleep, including my winding down time. Like, is my body getting restored, having rest, so I can have that mental clarity? Anyways, so those are things that come up as I'm answering these questions. I don't always implement everything I answer in these questions, but it just gives me ideas of, oh, these are like the tangible ways in which I want to focus on implementing these things for the next year. And so now what I'm going to do after I eat, I'm going to go to my Notion page. I have like a template that I duplicate every year where I write out the different buckets of my life that I want to focus on. And they're usually the same. I think I'm probably just going to add one more this year that's specifically on mental clarity and the things involved in that. And then I'll have check boxes of potential goals in each. From where I narrow down, I'll like mentally create tiers of which ones are most important and which ones are like, yeah, I want to track it and I want to know, but it's not the top priority. So it's okay if I'm not getting a 90% on those, because you don't want to have 5 million goals. That's what's next. But I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat now. A late lunch. All right, I'm back. Basically what I'm working on now is my Notion page. I don't use this to talk about all of my goals that I want to track and focus on. It's kind of like the dump list. So what I'll do throughout the year is I'll look this over, not to say that I'm going to do everything on this list, but so that I could see some of the things that I had brainstormed, and even the things that aren't top priority, I could still work on them or keep them at top of mind should I have that leeway. But if not, those are things I'm not going to be sticklers about. Within these lists though is where I choose the specific ones I'm going to track in my spreadsheet and the ones that I'm going to be more of a stickler about and evaluate myself during my monthly refresh that I do at the end of each month. So some of the big buckets that I have under here, one, early morning habits. And usually early morning habits have to do with what I'm focusing on for the year, because the mornings, if I'm able to wake up, that is, it's the most like protected time that I can do things without the disturbance or interruption of daily life. My notifications are off. Well, my notifications are always off, but it's extra silent then. Sometimes I keep my airplane mode on even in the morning. So what things do I want to instill in the morning that is more guaranteed to be done than if I were to wait till later in the day? I also have a section for 30-day challenges, and that's for like if I want to implement a new habit or want to try some kind of new habit or thing and test it out, I'll do a 30-day challenge, since that's very manageable. It's pretty easy to do something for at least 30 days. And then the other buckets are more common maybe. One I do have for creativity, since that is a huge value of mine. And then one is for health, health being like physical health. The other is for spiritual life. Another bucket for learning, mental clarity. This is the new one for this year. I put a whole section on mental clarity. You're going to have certain checklist items that overlap, but the point is just to get it all out on one sheet. And then you could always consolidate the goals when you're tracking them later, or that's what I do. I have a section for finances because that's been a huge conviction of learning how to steward my finances, especially ever since I had a full-time job. You know, what are my plans or my budget, how I'm going to save money, my goals for how much I want to put into like a Roth IRA or pay off my loans, things like that. I have a section on relational. So that's anything related to friends, family, romantic relationships. And then I have a section for hospitality or cooking. That was like a specific bucket I had put in a previous year because hospitality is really important to me. I usually try to focus on one or two things that have to do with hospitality. One year it was I want to host something at least twice a month at my place. Another year it's like, oh, I want to learn how to make a good cup of coffee for people who come over, or like learn how to cook certain dishes in case someone comes over impromptu and I have an easy thing I know how to cook, random things like that. Professional is another bucket. And then I have a bucket that's called home, and that has to do with like home projects or if I need to plan for my move or something like that. Those are my buckets that I pretty much recycle, and I'll maybe add some here or there. I may not even use all of them, but under each of those, based on my vision casting on my iPad and my year compass, I will put checklist items. So some examples from last year for health, sipping water throughout the day, because water intake it's been like the bane of my existence for the past 30 something years. And this last year was the first year that I've actually built that habit. It's still a fight, but I think I've at least drank some level of water every day. And on most good days, I would drink at least 40 ounces, which is insane. I never was able to do that before. What else is under there? Oh, eating home cooked meals. I think I home cooked 90% of the meals if I was home. Another example for spiritual, I said I wanted to memorize 15 scripture passages, which I did. And for finances, I wanted to pay off a huge chunk of loans, which I did, etc. So I'm going to be working on that. I was working on it and I need to finish it up. And then I will come back and show maybe part of what I finished today. I just finished my Notion page and I rearranged it a bit. Every year I rearrange things based on what I think is a better system, view, etc. I have not created the specific goals yet, but I created the word vomit list of checklist items. I added also because it's just a good reminder, I think, when every time I review this page or I like go back to my goals, I put the question at the top, what is the chief end of man? And I wrote to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And then I put that favorite quote that I've been talking about. You must rearrange your days so that you are deeply enjoying everyday life with God. That's just like my North Star of everything that I'm doing. That's it. Essentially, I will say that even when you're making these goals, it can feel discouraging if you feel like you failed. I think it would be helpful for me to show you how many of the goals I, technically speaking, in a scoring system failed from last year, but why in certain ways that doesn't matter and why it's still helpful. Because despite me failing in the grade sense, in the way that I calculated my grading of my own goals and my progress, even in the midst of that, there were so many things that I accomplished. So even if I didn't reach my 85% consistency for certain goals, I did develop a habit of, for example, drinking water, or of making most of my meals when I'm at home, or starting this YouTube channel. Like, honestly, this has been a goal for a few years now, but if it weren't listed in my goals every year, I wouldn't have even gotten to where I am now, because all of those past years I've been slowly prepping for it in different ways. So just by having your body posture towards the direction that you want to go is helpful in and of itself, even if you don't even take that step. Even if you trip and fall and someone pushes you on accident, you're still going forward in the direction that you want to be in. And so I've just seen how these past few years, even with my failed goals, I still kept pushing in the right direction, even if it was like the slowest crawl. And I think that's really symbolic of our own sanctification and spiritual lives. So yeah, you can't be discouraged by the numbers. You have to just face the direction and just keep going with the grace that He gives you to move the tiniest steps, maybe not in the ways that you expect. That's just a little word of encouragement. And next time I will show you my goal system and some of the more tangible ways that I'm gonna track these items. Until then, bye, good night.